Thank you very much, Tony. I hope you can hear me. I'm still a long way from the microphone, and if I wander, I am told you won't hear me. That's fine, so just tell me to come back here. Okay, so for me, it is an honour to be asked to do this, and I thank One Nucleus and Tony. It's interesting, and it's made me think a lot hard about my career, what I think's learning, and where I think the industry is going. But it is a personal perspective. So you might not think what I highlight is exciting, but as a preclinical to clinical drug discovery pharmacology, been around quite a while, this is what I think's important. And I know others will have other eyes. You all come from different perspectives, and that's the important thing. My perspective is preclinical pharmacology, exciting science, driving business and growth. And things towards patients, which is really always my biggest driver. Okay, so I can't see that, so I can see it down there. Not very well. Okay. So I'm going to have to remember what I said on my slides, I think. So, the truth is, this industry is built on big markets. That's what matters. But if you look at the NCATS data, it actually makes it quite clear. There's thousands of diseases and only hundreds of treatments. There's a huge amount of opportunity out there. Now, this says 95% of diseases are not treated. Of course, that's a very black and white thing, and the details around that matter, but I think it is an interesting overall start point. But we all know that the problem is, for us as drug discovery people, that actually it still costs a fortune to get a drug to patients. Most of them still fail. It still takes too long. And that's why our industry is so expensive and so difficult, and we have to focus on the big market opportunities. I think improving efficiency and cost of our whole process is absolutely critical to the survival and growth of this industry. There is no doubt in my mind, and I'll show some data, that AI is making headway here. And it's really important. But I do really want to emphasize that actually many of these AI tools and algorithms are not validated as a good pharmacologist would validate them. Data isn't good that's built them, and they need to be validated with positives and negatives and, properly. But we're making decisions on these because in many ways companies have to at the moment. There's a lot of pressure on them. So, got to learn there, I think. So I'm going to focus on what I think is exciting about what's happening at the moment. We all see a little bit of our industry. Maybe we don't see what's happening in the wider sense, and I'm going to give you a glimpse of that and look at the different modalities and the progress we're making, because it is exciting times. And obviously look at the tools briefly and why I think the industry's changing and partnerships become the key issue. So, if you can read this, you probably can't, and I recognise it. It comes from Eric Topol, a very wise medic doing a lot on social media. And it's a very nice graph showing the cancer immune therapeutic space. Starting with immune checkpoint inhibitors a little while back, going through all the different types, bispecifics, oncolytic viruses, and at the top, the most powerful thing that we could have is still a bit of a dream, is vaccines that prevent cancer. It's a bit of a dream, but there are some examples, and I'll come back to that. So if you look at the trial data, look at how many fall into this category. This is where industry is really focusing. Lots of in process on the right-hand side, and some of them approved as you go along. But one of the things that I think is particularly, obviously cancer is really important, and no one's going to deny that. But the fact that we're learning from these technologies and these developments for other areas, like autoimmune disease, and I'll come back to that. So, as I say, I can't actually read the slides, which is not good. Okay, so I'm going to go through what I think are important modalities. And, you know, have no doubt that CAR-T is making an impact, will continue to make impact. I spent a little time on the west coast of America, and for me, the most exciting thing happening at both UCSF and Stanford was the editing of cells so that you can make them do what you want them to do. And that's what's happening here, and it's now in action. A lot of the CAR-Ts are showing data. These are just examples of those CAR-Ts and split into the ones that work in vitro. Basically, you're getting the cells out, you're editing them, and you're putting them back in. And that first one is AstraZeneca's, dual targeting CAR-T, having an impact, really, really a difference. But the whole of that approach is going towards in vivo CAR-T, and that's because the first one is a very expensive option. You're almost doing it personally, and the manufacturing becomes a real cost issue. So on the right-hand side, we have in vivo CAR-T, and this example, you know, they're effectively using methods to deliver genetic material to the T cells, or alternatively viral vectors to deliver that. And everything happens in the body. The manufacturing thing is not there, so the costs are taken out. And from what I can work out, all the companies are going this direction. This is, you know, cost-wise, it's proving to be the future. Now, the other thing is that you'll know that most of the data for CAR-T is on liquid tumours, hematological tumours, and that's because it works better on them. You can get it to them, it works better on them. But actually, solid tumours are a really important step. And although that data in the bottom there, if you can see it, you can just see the red line isn't that much different to the blue line, isn't that spectacular. What you've got here is an approved, in China, CAR-T that actually targets Claudin 18.2 and actually is having some effect. These are gastric tumours. So I think CAR-T is the space to watch. I think it will get better. It will get modified. It will go in vivo. It will be working on solid tumours. CAR-T has a lot of toxicity. My daughter's an oncologist, and she has more problems dealing with the side effects of these things, CAR-T and checkpoints, than she does actually getting the efficacy. So there's a side effect issue we really need to keep an eye on, actually, and trying to improve. But I think in vivo CAR-T is the future for this space. I'm going to go on now to immunotherapies for autoimmunity. So these are different types of approaches, and here we've got some really spectacular results in small studies, and that's all they are at the moment, I think. So Autolus for lupus, UK company, making real progress, putting people with lupus into remission. It's a very small study, but I think this is the future for this. And, you know, if you've got a CAR-T, you're working on cancer, look at autoimmunity, because I think it's really exciting. And, and actually has a big market, and it'll only grow. Moderna, it's not really their space, but they happen to find that their mRNA approach could be used for in vivo CAR-T, and they're going that direction for B-cell autoimmunity. The Sanofi one is an important one to celebrate, and I think that's what this is about. And this is the idea that for the first time, you can slow people who are likely to get diabetes from getting it. And the current estimate is that it might slow people in that position to actually get diabetes and require insulin by about 3 years. This is now approved by NICE, and they reckon they will be prescribing it to about 75 people a year. That's where they are. There's a lot more than that, but there's a price issue here, clearly. But I think it's very exciting that we're starting to make a difference to these type of diseases. So ADCs are the other really big thing that if you've just been to bio will be jumping up and down. And I think, again, what's interesting, I mean, they've been around a long time, and it's been, you know, join your drug conjugate up to an antibody, target it at something, and it'll all work. And it has to a certain extent. But what's getting exciting now is the engineering around these ADCs. And here I've got a few examples. Again, I'm having trouble reading these slides and reminding myself what they are. Is that you're getting site-specific targeting into tumours. You're getting more dual target ones, and some of them are already out there and in the clinic. You're getting things targeting like RAS and doing pan-RAS targeting things. That's interesting. There's a number of them out there. And the last one is the degrader one. And I think that's quite interesting. You know, we're just starting to learn about small molecule degraders, and now we're getting antibody degrader options. And I'm a fan of degraders because if you don't have to spend years trying to target a target properly with, you know, get the right pocket, do all that, you can just take the target out. This sounds like a good plan. You just have to watch the side effects, I think. So, moving on to gene therapy. In all of our careers, gene therapy has been the great white hope. It hasn't had that much impact. But about 2 years ago, and I can't remember the date, Spark, and now I think it's the company that moved to Novartis, are doing great things. These are cures on the whole. Some of them require further dosing. I think the sickle cell disease one can require further dosing. But they're as close to cures as we're getting. So we're getting now approaches that are really starting to impact things using all of them clever synthetic engineering approaches that we actually are learning about across the piece. So we really should be celebrating these, definitely. Vaccines. I love this data. This data, BBC announced it in the morning. Effectively, if your kids, your girls, because most of them were girls at the start, get dosed with HPV vaccines, currently it would suggest they will not get HPV cervical cancer. This is UK data, and it's spectacular, and I think we're not singing about it as we should be. But I think the vaccine space is getting really interesting. And if you talk to the companies out there in the immunotherapy space, there's a lot of them will actually be saying vaccines are the future to treat them populations that you think are going to get something and avoid it. This has to be really, really exciting work. And I'm also quoting on the right-hand side some other approved therapies that are actually going for other targets, other cancer targets, prostate, lung, ovarian, melanoma. This is truly good scientific progress. Now, most of my career has been about small molecules. Well, the early part, I guess, not so much lately. And small molecules are still a really important part of what we do. We're doing, I say, in terms of new molecules, that doesn't stop the others being useful. We're going into some interesting mechanistic territories. So these molecular glue approaches, you know, engaging things together and then putting the target protein into the dustbin, the cell dustbin, is a good plot. targeted protein degradation has a similarity to the molecular glues. It's just done mechanistically different. And, of course, this one that I've highlighted here is Arvinus's EGF molecule, which is now approved for breast cancer. So real progress, we'll see many more of these. And, of course, there's some clever ones like LITACs and all different types of mechanisms coming up as well. On the right-hand side, I've got their radioligands. And again, we've all been very aware of the effect of radioligands in some way on cancer. And it's been used widely. LOX's toxicity can be just beams. But actually, I think what we're seeing is true progress in really difficult areas, mainly solid tumours, I think. And what we're seeing is properly targeted radioligands, sometimes targeted with antibodies, but sometimes small molecules that take them to the target. And I think we'll see a lot more of that going forward. The bottom one is, of course, RAS. We've been trying to target for it a long time. Small molecules, Kevin Shokat at UCSF showed the way, and now we're starting to get a lot more of these. And here we have Bridge Bio-Oncology with an oral one, because so many tumours are sensitive to RAS, this will have an impact. And the fact that it's oral, and I'll come back to this in a minute, does make the market much bigger. Be very clear. That little tweak, which you and I know isn't always so easy, makes a huge difference to the market. Now, peptides. When I started at GSK, a long time ago, peptides just were not seen as good drugs, or even possible drugs. They were seen as things that have poor PK. You can't have them hanging around very long. They fall apart. You can't get them to where you want to. You can't even formulate them to do that. But of course, we all know that the GLP-1 space has changed that. Apart from the fact it's changed the possibility that people, other than diabetics, will start injecting themselves at home. This is a massive move that at the time GSK thought no one would ever do. Not for a disease like this, which of course has morbidity, but actually a lot of people are choosing to use GLP-1s because they want to be smaller, basically, and they can afford it. In the UK, sometimes that's the way it has to be. So this is really massive field. You all know about it. You can't avoid it. It's out there. Lots of companies got it. In fact, it could be the must-have thing that every big pharma has to have. The fact that it's now going into an oral opportunity will make it even bigger. And that first oral there, Ricebus, or I can't say the word, it is going to have massive impact. It's going to be a massive market. But there are still side effects. Let's not ignore that. Arguably, they're side effects that people clearly feel they are worth handling. But there are side effects. And the future of this area is definitely about getting greater quality of weight loss. And that can mean, weight loss in the right way. The right fat to muscle ratio seems to be very important, as well as the side effects and the tolerability. Oral is going to be the way forward. And I think it's really interesting to see some of the other indications here. This whole space is now being proposed for addiction. And that's because, a bit like Viagra, it's from results of clinical studies saying, actually, these people actually don't want to drink as much. This is real pharmacology and was things we should take notice of. So there's real opportunities there as well. Peptides have been shown to be good drugs now. And on the right-hand side there, I've got loads of other options that are being progressed, certainly not supposed to be complete, but there are opportunities there as well. So you don't have to give your peptides SC. This market is now massive because there's a lot of people still who do not want to inject themselves. I do want to highlight something that in the last 2 years has hit me quite hard, is that I'm a pharmacologist. It's all about drugs and trying to get them to work for patients. But actually, some areas, we're really not doing a good job as an industry. And CNS is the one that I point out because that's where I've been focusing. I think the industry is failing on so many neuropathies. And we know why. Blood-brain barrier, don't actually understand the disease. There's lots of things in the why. But actually, Cambridge NeuroWorks, which is a consortium around Cambridge, helping people to ideate around neurotechnologies and drive them towards company build, is showing me a different world. You know, we have 6 different approaches moving forward in this, from the first cohort addressing OCD, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all sorts of things that the industry as a pharmacology approach alone has failed. So I encourage people to think about medtech a little bit more, not only think about drugs, think about combining drug and technology. I think there's a huge amount of opportunity here that, you know, if you look in the US is really burgeoning in this area. Lots of investment, lots of great fun things getting approved and moving forward. UK's a little bit behind. NeuroWorks, with ARIA's help, is helping us move this space forward. So to me, it's quite exciting. I can't ignore AI, because AI to me is revolutionizing drug discovery. And we should think about that in a positive way. Of course, it has side effects of its own, but we should think about it positively. And if you look, every pharma company is implementing AI approaches at every level of this process. Now, some of that, I would suggest to you, is not as well validated as it needs to be to make the decisions that they're using them for. And I think, as a pharmacologist, I think it's very straightforward how you validate an assay. You should be validating the models in the same way. But, yeah, we're using them, and we're using them in anger. But if you look at these 2 companies, I'm just highlighting these 2 because they're the ones that I've been watching for years. In Silico Medicine, IPO'd in Hong Kong, run by Alex Sarakov, and they created AI platforms really early. It is now the most widely used drug discovery platform across the pharma industry. There's 4 deals up there, all billion-dollar deals of pharma companies using this across their platforms. Their own internal pipeline has 40 programs in it, and many of them are past IND. These 3 on the graph here are just trying to illustrate that actually their in silico first approach is making a difference and is shortening the time to the clinic and onwards. That last program, TNIC, yesterday was announced to move into phase 3 by in silico medicine. Now, I don't know if when they get to phase 3, these things will work. I think we will have an interesting time when the data comes out and we can actually see whether that entirely AI approach is working. But I do want to highlight Isomorphic, the UK company that is definitely on the top of this list. They're doing some fantastic work. They are genuinely moving from finding a target all the way to the clinic using in silico and doing it in the right way. But at the same time, I would say they're not talking about it as much. They've just done this raise, 2.1 billion, I think it was, yeah. And it's massive. They're working with companies, but they're not talking about it too much. but watch them, because I think this is one of the most exciting companies, and of course, it's British. We should be singing about it. So my bottom line is, I think AI is shortening the time to the clinic, but it will be interesting to see what happens in phase 3. And we'll see how they really read out, in terms of the efficacy in patients. I understand the data, if you just look at the clinical piece of this engine that is being built, that's harder, it isn't working as well. So most of the gains are early on, and it will be interesting to watch this space. But you can't ignore it. It's part of what we do in the future. It is a tool. I absolutely see it as a tool in drug discovery, like many tools. Someone actually, I heard, relating it to what email looks like. You can't avoid email in drug discovery, and you can't avoid AI either. So the other major tool is non-animal models. I started my career as an in vivo pharmacologist at Glaxo. I don't believe that animal models of disease have actually delivered for most things. So I think non-animal models of the future, human-based 3D models, the FDA agrees with me, is going forward, and they're starting with antibodies. And soon we will get registration from without animal models. Safety is a bit harder. This slide, to me, reminds me to tell you that I think the industry is changing. The early stuff used to be done all in big pharma, working with academia. That's happening less so. It's the SMEs that are doing all of the legwork on delivering molecules now, not large pharma. We need to do more early work, and I even suggest to you that's where the funding should go, SMEs and earlier, to get the pipeline for the future. So the ecosystem's changing, and I tell you there's huge opportunity. Partnerships are a really important part of what we do, and they're going to get more important. So smaller companies working with 10 other companies to bring things together. Make sure your skills are strong in what you do, what you offer in this process, and there's huge opportunities across the piece. And of course, partnerships are what the Milner does, and we have 10 big pharma companies working together, working with academia and our SMEs, working with our affiliates, of which we have 80 of them, and getting involved. And our job is to partner people, to make them find ways to build this ecosystem and get drugs moving. So, in summary, I think there's lots to be celebrating in this space. There's lots of opportunities. There's lots of great science. There's lots of tools that need to be worked up. Partnerships are really important. And the pharma industry is thought by many in the public to be a bit like large pharma. A bit like, I'm sorry, I've got that wrong. Big pharma's thought to be like oil companies, with all of the climate issues that they have. We're not like that. We are here to help patients. We should be celebrating what we do and being part of this industry. So everyone in it takes a real city, and more than a city, to produce a drug. And I think everyone in this should be celebrating, and we should shout about it more. Gonna leave it there.
Any quick questions from the floor?
Do I just shout? Or no,
We have a microphone. Unless you want to shout, we can shout.
No, I don't know.
Thanks. Yeah, really nice talk. Thanks a lot for that. So amongst the modalities you showed, you mentioned AI, of course we have to mention AI. Which of them do you think will benefit the most in the near future from AI, this acceleration effect, let's say? And you mainly talked about kind of established modalities, let's say. Are there any on your radar up-and-coming modalities that we should really be keeping an eye on?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I tried to look at different modalities and what else is coming out. I tell you, to me, that idea that you can synthesize cells, you can synthesize oligos, whatever, to do what you want it to do and program it in, for me is where the AI is making a huge impact, because you're using AI to do that. But it's bringing out a whole load of different modalities, and I think that's where we should be keeping an eye on, and I'd love to see the UK doing more of that. I saw a lot of it on the West Coast, but I'd love to see the UK doing more of that. But the other thing is AI making a big... AI is making a huge difference in molecule design, base it on AlphaFold and structures. You can get it to design your molecule for you.
They had the protein design in mind as well.
Yes, absolutely. Similar, yeah.
So I have one question around finance. I'm really happy you brought that up because Pelin Chandarlıoğlu from 3D and 3Rs. I really like that you have brought up the concept of NAMs, and that is absolutely the future. And all around the world, especially the smaller biotechs, are utilizing that heavily, whereas this is the area operating. So I unfortunately see in UK, I don't see the same appetite. For large CROs, they are not really interested. And also all SMEs here, they look at that and it doesn't apply to me. Yeah. Why do you think we are not interested where the rest of the world is running with it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they are running with it, but the question is how much effort they can put on it versus something that's raising the money now. And that, so it's a balance. If you look at it, pharma's going this direction, you know, I think without doubt, once the regulators are all there, that's where we're going. I think CROs will have to do this. I think it's a while before we give up animals for toxicology, particularly. But I think efficacy studies using complex models is the future, but it'll take a while. Okay.
Watch this space. Thank you, Cathy.